Yep.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. Moving on to reports and recognition. Beginning with the board chair's report, which I have a report tonight. Tonight, we are saying goodbye to two of our board members who have established themselves as larger-than-life personalities on our board. Chris Straub.
Can't be good.
Chris Straub is our CEO in residence, and in your 4 years on the board, you have been extremely generous with your time, resources, and your expertise. Among other things, I think each of us goes to bed at night and wakes up in the morning thinking about good board governance. Your work on the Business Ops Committee has added efficiency to several important processes, and knowing that the operating budget had your seal of approval was always a critical endorsement. You have never been shy about asking the hard questions, which of course has made our work better. You have generously offered to continue to provide counsel, for which I personally am very grateful. So many thanks to you, Chris, and congratulations on all you have accomplished while on the board.
Thank you.
And then there's our leader, Bruce. Tonight marks the end of Bruce's 8 years of service on the Board of Education, the last 6 of which were spent as chairman. We can't thank you enough for your years of selfless service and for the many ways in which you have made the Board of Education more transparent and a more transparent and efficient operation, as well as, frankly, a more fun place to be. Many of you who regularly pay attention to the board meetings have come to expect the civility and congeniality with which we conduct ourselves. But I want to tell you that that wasn't always the case. Bruce spent his first years on the board breaking down barriers and building the trust that is so critical to a successful school district. Bruce has amassed a long list of accomplishments, but I will just cite 2 tonight. First, the role he played in bringing Dr. Kevin Smith to our district. And second, that he has instilled in all of us the premise that our work must always, always be focused on serving Wilton students. We will miss having both of you on the board, and please know that we are grateful for all you have contributed, and that we will proudly build on your accomplishments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
So I have a few. I'd like to echo some of Chris's sentiments, and Chris, start with you. I think, like Chris and the rest of the board, I too am deeply grateful for your time, your attention, and your thoughtful, very thoughtful feedback. I don't know if everyone knows this, but one of the gifts that Chris has given me over the time that we've served together is he really pushes me. He's pushed my thinking in ways that has been really, I think, helpful to me as the superintendent, but also helpful to the district. His focus on clear and measurable objectives, and he comes around to that in just about every single conversation we have, has forced me to really look at the way we operate. And I think hopefully you see some of your influence in some of the work that we have done together. I think also I've really benefited from your compassion and your thoughtful listening, and I appreciate that. We've had some significant issues over the last few years, and you have been tremendous in your support, and I want to thank you for that. And I think on behalf of the entire district, we want to offer you a very small and simple token to represent your time on the board, and as a token of our gratitude, and just wishing you farewell.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it. So Mr. Likely, I came to Wilton because of the tremendous reputation of this school district and the influence of this board, and in addition to having the benefit of working with some of the smartest people I've ever met, I also gained a friend. And Bruce, I want to thank you for that. Your time, your attention, your unwavering enthusiasm has motivated me, and I think spurred us all on to continue to be champions for kids in this district and to focus on getting better every single day. Your desire to have Wilton be number one, I think, is place to stake in all of our hearts, and that is our commitment and our mission. And know that as you depart, we will carry forward with that mission and vision. And I want to thank you too, and also present to you as also a very simple token and gratitude for your time on the board. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just a couple of other updates, if you don't mind. Last week, we learned that the Wilton Board of Education has been awarded Connecticut Association of School Boards Level 2 Board Leadership Board of Distinction Award. So congratulations to all of you for the last 2 years. You have earned the Level 1 distinction, so now you've taken it to the next level.
Is 2 better than 1?
2 is better than 1,
Okay.
Chris. Bruce said, be the
Are
best.
we going up or down?
You're going up. And just as a point of reference, you are just one of 9 boards in the state to earn that distinction. So congratulations, and thank you for all of your work. There'll be a recognition ceremony next Friday at the Cape Caps Convention, and so the members that are attending can participate, and you can pick up the next plaque. Cape doesn't have a level 3 yet, but I'll lobby for that so we can
All right.
continue to strive. I had previously shared with the board a number of steps that the district is taking in response to the recent anti-Semitic incidents that occurred at Middlebrook, and so I just want to recap. I've asked each of the principals to commit to writing a response plan for each school that will capitalize on our current efforts and further raise awareness about bias and tolerance. As you know, district-wide, we're partnering with the Anti-Defamation League, and we're pursuing the following actions. At Middlebrook, we plan to introduce ADL's Step Up program. I believe Lauren's been in touch with one of the representatives at ADL, and we're looking to bring that program next month. Also at Middlebrook, Cindy Beckmore is launching a new Upstander Club with the goal of further empowering students to serve as strong allies to all those students who are marginalized by mean behavior. We're also beginning to lay the foundation to bring the Names Can Really Hurt Us program to Wilton. This is a renowned high school program that's very powerful for high school age students. The earliest that we'll be able to run that program would be next fall, so our intention is to use the time between now and this spring to train our student leaders so we can be ready to go early on in the fall. Kim Zemo, who's here with us this evening, our district Safe School Climate Coordinator, is in the process of convening a broad-based committee of teachers, administrators, students, parents, and other community members to plan how we might implement ADL's No Place for Hate curriculum. As we looked at that, we thought this would be a very neat dovetail fit with our current climate work that is being facilitated by Bill Preble across our district. So stand by on hearing more information about that. We've also made plans, again, through the Anti-Defamation League to provide anti-bias training to all of our instructional staff. They have a 1-hour program entitled The Jewish Experience, What Jewish Families Want Educators to Know. So Sharon Citron from the Anti-Defamation League will be presenting that program. We'll begin next Wednesday, the 15th at Wilton High School, and then she'll be back with us again on December 6th at Middlebrook, and then on December 13th at Miller Driscoll, and we have a tentative date we just need to lock in, January 31st for Cider Mill. I have been in touch with Chris Cluett, who is the superintendent of Shelton Public Schools. He ran an experience for his staff earlier this year where he had a number of different presenters, including the ADL, who provided anti-bias training from a number of perspectives. So I have that list of resources now, and I'll be reaching out so we can further follow up and hopefully provide a really robust experience for all of our staff. That's it.
Great, thank you. On to committee reports. Glenn?
Okay.
Building ops?
Yeah,
Miller Driscoll.
so this morning we held a Business and Ops Committee meeting. The budget work continues there, and I think we had a really good meeting this morning. We are continuing to develop and refine our financial reporting, what we showed, what we kept on a monthly basis, and Ann is working with Mary Ann on doing that. And we continue to work on the budget, so that's that. I'm glad to report, finally, after long, drawn-out negotiation, that the contract has been signed for the solar project. And this comes from the Energy Commission. We began that process for Miller Driscoll High School and for Middlebrook. And it's anticipated, and it should be, that over the course of the life of the contract, we'll save the town almost $2 million in energy expense. So it's a big project, and that's finally done. It's underway. Installation will begin shortly. A large part of the equipment has already been delivered. It's on site at Miller Driscoll. So that's done. The building committee met tonight. Our expectation is that we will have all of our contractors closed out by the end of December. The issue that arose relative to the HVAC work at Miller Driscoll and the humidity control, we think we have identified the issue and the problem, and Chris and the whole team is, the hours they've worked on doing that are just too many to mention. The first stage will take repair and updating will take place at the April break.
So it's an equipment problem?
It's an equipment problem, and right now, from now through the winter, it's not a problem. It's a humidity control problem, so as long as we stay cool, not an issue. So we'll begin the process in April, and the plan is to complete it over the course of next summer and have all the rooms updated and fixed.
Great.
And so we're hoping this is a fix. Everyone seems to think it is, and we'll find out. But we'll have all the contracts closed out at the end of the year, and we'll be done. We are still on target for finishing at about a $36 million expense, which is $16 million less than the bonded amount of $51 million, which is a pretty good deal. Okay. That includes the state reimbursement, but a net of about $36 million for the project. And if you've gone through the school, as most of you have, it's money well spent. Okay.
All right.
Done.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Last week, the pension and OPEB committees met. Financial performance, asset performances at or better than benchmarks. That's positive. Still, though, our near to intermediate term forecast for returns on assets in the pension plan are lower than the discount rate we're using to calculate the liability. So I'd expect in the next several years there will be increasing contributions required, by the town and by extension the Board of Ed to fund the pension plan. But Ann will have the details on that, but I would plan for that over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Okay. Teaching and learning?
Teaching and learning, we're meeting next week for a monthly meeting. And tomorrow is a social, emotional curriculum review committee meeting, some organization of that. So that's continuing what was going on last year. And also, as not that the youth council is aware that I'm their Board of Ed rep, but they had Michael Fallon come in last week, which was already scheduled, and I went to the parent one. I had gone to the one that was at the high school last year, and it was incredibly timely, and very sad that I had to see some of the same parents over and over again that week, but I think it was well received, and it was a good job. The youth council does good stuff in our town.
Great. Thank you. Policy and communication?
We met on Tuesday. We've got a number of policies that we're looking at, and they'll be coming to the board in the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you. The community conversation, how about a debrief on what we just experienced out in the library? Glenn?
Well, we could have used probably 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, I think of the 9 questions that we had prescribed, we got through 3 of them. But we had some really good input to our table. I think it's really valuable and some really good input. I just, the opportunity to sit and talk with parents or the public about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it is you can never have too much of that.
Right.
Never.
Did anything jump out?
No, not really. Nothing, no.
Okay.
Yeah. It's many of the questions we've heard before, same questions, and we just, the driver we talked about this morning in our ops committee meeting is really, it's going to be critical for us how we communicate as a board.
Right.
That's the critical thing, how we communicate, why the budget is what it is, what the assumptions were, what it means, okay, how did we get there? And I think it just, it goes beyond budget communication, it's just how we communicate in general to the public about the work we're doing is absolutely critical. You just always have to find better ways of doing it. I think, it's a shame that I think that the whole community can't come and observe what we do
Right.
here, okay?
Right.
Hopefully, most of them, or many of them watch it on TV or privy to it, or watch it later if they aren't available tonight, to see what happens and to really see, but, it was good. We could have used easily 2.5 hours more of time tonight, and it would have been worthwhile.
Right, absolutely. Laura?
Yes, it was good. Our table was, thank you to all the parents who sat with us, it was almost all parents. It was all parents, because we were heavy on the administrators. But it was interesting, and, when we asked what could be taken away, it was nothing, except, some things could be improved, changed, tweaked, but it was, that seemed to lead to discussion about things they'd like to see or things, and it was, very appropriately so focused on their own children's experiences, and, we had Sargent Middle, Middlebrook, and High School represented, and, just the concern is always the kids, are they learning, are they getting the support they need in their education, whether they're, typical or,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Chris?
So what I heard that I would suggest maybe the board, maybe the administration might want to test, there was an assertion made, a thesis, that increased spending on professional development for teachers, particularly around literacy, might actually produce a reasonably substantial ROI, that the money spent early could significantly reduce, among other costs, sped referrals. And if I was hearing correctly, there may be some, recent empirical, data that supports that. So I'm not aware of it, but it would be, I suggest useful, follow-up.
Great, thank you. Bruce?
One piece that I was at the same table, the piece that I'd add is that there is some interest in having the school district proactively push out our agendas and minutes.
Oh,
Somebody wanna get the door?
That was an email push.
So like if we pushed out the day, like Thursday morning, this is what our
This is what's
agenda
gonna be-
is,
Right.
parents would be more informed of like, oh, I'm gonna stay home and watch the Board of Ed meeting.
it's interesting.
Right.
One of the big topics at our table was where to get the information. As there's
was
just
definitely-
so much information, but there's like no central spot to get it. We also had some great ideas about tapping into the tremendous parent resources and expertise in our community, and bringing that into the schools possibly as a way to take the place of outside people who come in. And of course, lots of ideas for things that we could, that kids would benefit from: more STEM, more world language, work vocational training, since a 4-year college education isn't for every student, and very interesting discussion. So, do you have any thoughts on?
I do. I mean,
Things well.
I found it to be very engaging, and I appreciated the multiple perspectives. I think, we heard quite a bit of conversation about the augmentations that people would like to see. World language was one of them, and a desire to push world language even further. A desire to continue our efforts to share services.
Right.
And to also, one member was asking us to find ways to protect those who are on fixed incomes.
Yeah. Right.
I think it was good, we had a number of members from the Board of Finance. John Calvin Reeves was at my table, and it was good for them, I think, it was a learning experience for them to hear the story, not from us, but also from parents.
Right, I think, yeah, we had,
Okay.
Yeah, we had Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeff, so
Stuart
yeah, it was
and,
good that they
Richard.
came, and I think it was good for them. Hopefully, it's going to help move the relationship and the understanding of our budget process and why we're doing
Right.
what we're doing forward.
Right.
So that was really good. I appreciate them taking the time to come and be part of that process.
Okay. So all this feedback will be taken into account as the budget process continues. So thank you again to everyone who participated. Next on the agenda is the school climate report.
Great, so we want to invite Kim Zemo and Dr. Bill Preble to come forward. Bill is the expert we've been working with since I started in 2014, and through Kim and our administrators in the buildings has been driving the climate work. So we've asked Bill to come and talk about the process and the framework, and also share some of our data and take questions as it comes up. So welcome.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to be here, and it's been a pleasure to be here for the last few years. First worked with Chuck, kind of moving over from some other schools in the area, and started to work here. And just even hearing the discussion around the table tonight about the way that you folks are honoring one another and the work that you do, and how you appreciate the humor and you appreciate the commitment and the passion and the joy, and that's really the work we're trying to do on school climate. It's very similar. How do you take public schools that are under incredibly sort of severe stress when it comes to academic performance, and somehow put that whole social and emotional piece in? And I heard you talking about, you've got the social emotional learning initiative, and you're doing a whole lot of things on school climate besides this particular process that we're going to talk about tonight. And they all, I think the trick is to sort of have the synergies between all of those different programs and initiatives. Some other assets that I see here that have been really phenomenal, the level of engagement of your principals in this work, I have to say, is phenomenal. You can't do school climate work from anywhere other than a building level with principal support, and every one of your principals has been incredible. They also bring their own passions and their own initiatives to the table, not just sort of adopting what we bring in the door. And so every school is different, and that's one of the things we're going to try to do today, is show you how each school has evolved in sort of its own way, but a part of that's the leadership of the principals. So they're driving the bus a lot more than me. We bring a process that's pretty particular, and that's what we're going to share tonight. It's a process called student-led collaborative action research, or youth participatory action research in the literature. And so, the challenge is always to take a model like that, which is a very structured model, and to not sort of ram it down people's throats, but there's ways to tweak it, and there's ways to work with youth participatory action research. I think that every school finds a different way in. But at the end of the day, there really are specific elements of that process that we have to try to pay attention to make the program work well. And so we're kind of balancing, the idea of kind of customizing it with the notion of fidelity of implementation of the model, and that's the dance, I guess, that we're always involved in. I will try tonight to make sure that you leave with a few things, if this clicker works. So we wanted to update you. We wanted to celebrate some of the amazing work that's going on that you may not be aware of. We wanted to discuss some of the recent challenges that you've been dealing with, I think, in some of the schools in the context of sort of the school climate sort of vision or leadership model that we use. So we wanted to try to place the harassment piece in the context of the overall kind of respectful schools work that I think is out there. I wanted to give you that big picture just so you could sort of see a little bit more about how that harassment piece fits into the bigger picture around school climate. We want to highlight a case study tonight, and so it's hard to talk about all the schools at once, and so Jen agreed that she would allow us to use her school as one of the cases. We'll highlight some of the specifics from all the schools, but we want to really drill down to show you how implementation of youth-led action research actually can work well, and we wanted to highlight that work there. And lastly, poor Chuck and Kevin, when we met earlier in the week, and I sort of had a little temper tantrum, I really wanted to make the point that while we are in the age of measurement, and we are the age of assessment and the age of accountability, we want to put together a process here and make it really clear that the data that we gather and the way that we gather the data and the results that we gather are really best used in a formative way, not to give every school a score. Because when you take a kid who comes to school passionate about school, feeling safe and respected, and you average a kid who comes to school and sits by him or herself and is feeling upset or depressed or alienated, what do? Average those two together and get some kind of school climate score? I think you just lost the whole point. when you don't pay attention to the unique needs of those two different populations. So we're gonna start with a little exercise that Kevin actually said we should do because it's called School Climate Activity Number 1. And we use it everywhere we go, and we thought we'd do it to get a chance to engage the crowd here. And we're gonna, if you don't mind, to do this one. I'm gonna ask you not to open up your packet because there's a slide on there that I'd like to just have you show, I'll show you on the board. So let me just run through this little thing first, just to kind of lead us off, and I'm gonna pray this video works. Open that up.
Just look at
This is very quick. Need a little volume. This is next week. This is my favorite part right here. He points it at the car. All right. So, why in the world would we start with that silly video clip? But it's kind of fun. We're gonna try to go fast, so I won't like draw this out. I like that because it really gets at the point of like the wrong car, right? I show that to teachers, and I say, how many of you guys are involved in hours and hours and years of professional development, and you feel like you're working on the wrong car? How many of you spend time as professionals doing things that you feel like may not really be the things that you should be spending your time on? And a lot of times teachers are asked to do things that they just really have to put up with and endure, and they walk out of those professional development sessions and they say thank you very much, but they very seldom implement with fidelity the things that they spend that one-day workshop on. It's really hard to go from being aware to actually putting that practice in place. So I guess what I try to do is start with a conversation of why school climate. How can we make sure that the way that we do this work is actually working on the right car? And I'm going to give you just two more little slices of this information about what we believe is really the key to the work, and it's based on two pieces of research that I just think as leaders I'd like you to know about. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Seymour Saracen, but anybody heard of Seymour Saracen's research? He's this really old dead guy, but he recently died. But he did, 40, 50 years worth of work on educational reform. They literally had graduate students studying every federally funded educational program in the history of the last 40 years in America, and they figured out which ones of those federally funded grants worked and which met their goals and which ones did not. And his finding was out of thousands of those, only a handful achieved their improvement goals. And in each of those, they included some kind of shift in power relations as part of the design. So when we do school climate work, Dr. Preble could come in here and talk to people and say, hi, this is how smart I am, and I can tell you everything I know, and I write books. I don't think people want to care too much about that. But when your kids stand up and tell their stories, we get people's attention. When students present to the faculty the data, teachers listen to the data discussions a whole lot differently when your students present their data than if I were to present or Kim were to present your data. And so we're always looking for this shift in power relations. So this notion of action research, which is like what most people do for their master's degree, we are training your kids to do collaborative action research, and many of the teachers get involved. They go, I can't believe we're doing this with elementary school kids. I just did this in my master's program. And your little second graders from last year, when they came up to your school and just sat down with us and analyzed qualitative and quantitative school climate data, drew conclusions about the general findings in those data, and came up with 3 action goals to work on for this year as 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, to me, is what learning is about. So this notion of engaging kids in the work of action research, where they solve the problems, they identify the issues, that's youth-led collaborative action research. I think it fits with Saracen's definition of a shift in power relations. The other one is Michael Fullen, and this is the drivers of educational change. And I think this is one of the most important things. So I would just ask you to look at what he calls the right drivers. This is what we should be using to make change happen in our schools. And I can tell you, if you just look around the country for the last 20 years, we haven't been using these drivers. We've been using different ones in many, many schools. I think this community is one of the ones that have been doing a whole bunch of things right and a whole lot of things different than many, many communities have done. But see, I actually just heard you talking about several of these things. If a driver is a right driver, it's something that fosters the intrinsic motivation. It gets people to want to do the work better instead of ramming stuff down people's throats. It brings out their intrinsic motivation. It engages educators and students in continuous improvement of curriculum instruction. And so I want to show you how our work on the social and emotional learning aspects of school climate are intimately tied to what we're asking teachers to do every single day in their classrooms. That is a really important part of the process. We don't say academics here and school climate here. We really want to talk about how one feeds the other and how they intersect. We want to inspire teamwork. The number one thing that improves educational performance, if you're familiar with Hattie's work, is this notion of collective teacher efficacy. Your teachers have really high levels of individual efficacy. We measure that as part of our school climate research. I don't know if you saw that. It's, to me, the schools that work are where the teachers feel like, wow, give me any kid and I'll figure out how to deal with it. And your teachers are really high on a lot of that stuff. But we don't measure collective efficacy, which is how well do they work together to solve problems. And we actually are going to add that to our new survey coming up, which I want to talk to you about at some point, if we can have your permission to do the next version of the survey, which is going to cause some comparison issues, but it's much shorter and gets at some other issues. We've been evolving it, so we want to roll that out at some point. And lastly, it affects all teachers and all students. So we think those are two things, Fullen's drivers and the predictable failure, the power relations piece, that drive this work. Now I really got to show you how we use the data. So can we have everybody participate in this, please? We're going to do a little game, a little exercise, school climate activity number 1. We're going to just ask you to read a card. Now please, if you're on the board and you have your packet, close it up because you have this slide and you can peek. One of the rules is no peeking. So I'm going to just show you a slide. It's going to have a little statement on it. I'm going to let you take a minute to read it. And then I'm going to ask you a couple questions after you've turned it over, just like school, right? You read stuff and you answer questions. Ready to read, everybody? Here we go. No talking and no peeking. Okay, everybody got it? Ready to answer? Anybody have a photographic memory? Did you memorize it? I'm going to let you read it one more time. All right, so this is where the no talking, no peeking rule comes in. Can I stand up? Is that okay? So I'm just going to ask you a question, and when I say the answer that you have in your head, I just want you to raise your hand. So we won't be talking, we'll just be raising our hands. I want you to visualize the card, close your eyes, think about what was on that card, that slide, and I want you to think how many F's you read. This is the no talking part. How many F's were on that card? Now I'm going to ask you the number, and you just raise your hand when you get there. How many people just saw 0 F's, no F's on that card? So put 0 down next to there, Kim. 1 F, you read just 1. 0 for 1. 2 F's, you read 2. 1. 1 for 2. Oh, wait a second. So this, sometimes I make people like close their eyes because they look around like what everybody else see. But I had 3 then, sorry. 3 for 2. So now 3 F's. 3 F's. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 for 3. 5 F's. Excuse me. That was 4, right? 5 F's?
No, that was 3.
That was 3. Sorry. This is 4 F's. My bad. 4 F's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 for 4. 5 F's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 for 5. 6 F's. 1. 7 F's. 0. 8. Sir? 7?
8.
8 F's for this gentleman here. 8. 1 for 8. All right, cool. A lot of times when I use a card, everybody has a different answer. They go, oh, fine, we must all have different cards, but we had a slide. So I think we know we all had the same slide. But now that you know the question, I'm going to have you do it again. No talking, no peeking except for on the slide. Ready? Here we go. Read again, please.
This is the no talking part. Okay. Let's do it again. 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. 1 for 2. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 for 3. 4, 1, 2, 3 for 4. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for 5. 6, 1, 2, 3 for 6. 7, 0, 8, 0. How much time we got? We could, I like to ask two questions at this point. How much time do we have and how many people have like advanced degrees? This is like how many F's are on this stupid little card and we can't agree. We could literally do this for the next hour and we wouldn't agree. So the question is, why is this school climate activity number 1?
Because you look at the same things.
And do you think that happens in the world of school climate work?
It happens in every area.
In every area of the world. We all look at the same things and we see them very differently. Any other reasons why this is school climate activity number 1? How many of you actually wish I would stop talking and tell you how many F's are on the card? And I want to tell you that is actually the reason we do this. Because with collaborative action research, our goal is to create what is going on in your heads right now, which is called cognitive dissonance, which basically is a place you get to where your head hurts. It's like, I don't know what's going on, and you intrinsically want to know the answer. You want to learn. Let's do this a different, I'm gonna change the teaching method, and we're gonna do this in a different way. I want everybody to take their index finger on their dominant hand and get ready to point it. Point at the first letter of the first word, and let's all read aloud and count as we go. So point with your finger, scan along. Finish 1, files 2, read aloud with me, are the result of 3 years of 4, scientific 5, study combined with the experience of 6, many years. How many of you have, how many are there?
6.
6. We all get the same answer, different instruction, totally different result.
Where'd you get
But I said to you to read, right? I said I'm gonna have you
I
read,
knew
you
there's
gotta
a
read
lot.
the card. The reason I said to read was because I
Couldn't
know
read
that
that
your
fast.
brain
I'm not that
reads
smart.
phonetically, and you read the, how many people missed F's and of?
2?
Because your brain read the. Even though the F was right in front of you and I asked you to look for F's, it's called a blind spot. So I just want to carry this idea that we all see things differently. Let's take the blind spots thing to seeing school, everything differently. Here's how it works. You wake up in the morning, you take a shower, you eat your breakfast, you get dressed, you go to the refrigerator, you take out a big piece of Swiss cheese, you take that Swiss cheese and you smush it on your face, and now you walk out in the world covered with your Swiss cheese and you look at your world through your own personal Swiss cheese every single day. Christine, do you think that men and women have different Swiss cheese a lot?
Yes, I do.
Do you think that kids who are college bound, for sure from the moment they're born, because daddy went to so-and-so and we go on weekends and we hang, I tell my stories about my roommate and all the fun we had at college, versus a kid who never had anybody go to college in his life and his family, do they have different Swiss cheese?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Do minority kids and majority racial, ethnic, religious kids have different Swiss cheese? Okay, see what I mean? So what we have to recognize, I've heard people complaining that there's gaps in the data. The gaps in the data are evidence of Swiss cheese. And we're gonna show you how that works. So if kids say one thing, and teachers say something else is going on, and you'll see how that works. The question is, who's right, or what do we do with that? If it's Swiss cheese, the teachers see it one way, the kids see it a different way, but is the perception through your Swiss cheese of reality your reality? If I say this school is dangerous to me because of who I am, is that my reality?
Yes.
Yes.
It's the same school that the other kids' reality is, that it's like wonderful and great and perfect and I love everybody and everything, but my reality when I walk in every day is my Swiss cheese reality. Okay. That's why we do collaborative action research, that's why we compare perspectives. School climate research is about perception. And changing school climate is about changing perception. Right. There's a good example. And I like it. So what's the solution? Let's talk about, what did you mean? I thought I I thought I invited you to make classroom rules, 89%. I thought I gave you kids a chance to do that. And kid go, oh yeah, but you're like, they're all your rules. So yeah, so in other words, it's not really choice. So again, what is the meaning of it when we ask kids that question, when we ask teachers that question? So Kim, I'm gonna have you talk through the process.
So we're engaged in the school improvement process, which is a 5-step model. And the first is to establish an improvement team comprised of teachers and students. And we have teams in every school in the district. Last year was the challenge of starting a student team at Miller Driscoll with 2nd graders, which was amazing to watch those kids throughout the year grow. I mean, it was a challenge in the beginning, but they
And
were,
for us too.
yeah, and totally engaged in the process. So that's happening across the district. The next step is to collect and analyze the data, which we are in year 3 of our school climate surveys. The third step is to take that data and set our school improvement goals around, which we're in the process of doing in all the schools now. And the students are very much a part of that. They set goals looking at the data as well as the adult team sets the goals that they're going to work on. And then step 4 is the action planning and project development, where we're really implementing the projects to try to focus on the goals that we've set. And then it's repeat, to start all over again, to take more data, see where we're improving and what areas we still need to work on.
And the only caveat about goal setting is the only goal you can set is for yourself. If you're the student leadership team and you set goals, it's not like, and the principal will do, or the school board will do. No, it's what are you gonna do as a member of the student leadership team to address that issue? And that is something that for teachers as well. It's not you set goals for kids, you set goals for what you are gonna do as a faculty to move these scores closer together or get something to improve. All right.
And that's where you really get the buy-in from the students, that they're initiating and they're taking that piece on.
If you want, so this is what we use to create the this is one of the elements of the survey.
The school climate standards, there's 5 standards, and really I've used those standards in terms of my planning, in terms of school climate within the district and what priorities that we're working on. So to really align the climate standards with the school climate work that we're doing across the district.
Again, another, we invite schools to gather data. That's what we do. Here's another example of it. Look at the difference. What do? You talk about it. So this is that collaboration piece. We can't sit in a room alone as adults and work on school climate. We have to have conversations like, what's going on with your Swiss cheese, kids? And the kids go, well, what's wrong with your Swiss cheese? And then we have that dialogue. As a whole country, we probably need to do this essentially. Yes, sir.
So are those real numbers? Are those Wilton's numbers?
Those are, I believe, yes, those are Wilton's numbers. Yep. Yep. And again, this brings up to another point. What's the top? Like, what's 100%? These are all percent positives. Like in a question, I feel safe in the school, it would be agree or strongly agree. So we like to, so that's why 2nd graders can understand these numbers, because it's like big numbers are good and small numbers are bad. But I guess my question is, like, what's realistic to hope for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in America right now, if you want to become president of the United States, you need 52. That's about it. So is 52 good? Well, it elects us, our government, but we think it's 80. We think when you get to 80% positive, you reach a threshold where the culture of the school, what's normal, natural for that school is what is represented in the 80% agreement. When you can get kids and teachers and parents 80, and by the way, you guys, you have more 80s in your data, if you look, than almost any other school we've ever been in. So it's that's why I kind of told those guys, don't look at those numbers on that little sheet and compare it to 100 and feel like your 68 is awful. No, your 68's getting up close to 80. So another year or so, you get that to 80, you're rocking and rolling. So this is where we had to have a conversation about your data, so you don't say, oh no, we want all A's here. B's or B minus, I don't know, 80% agreement on any perception of reality where we have consensus of 80% of the room, that's pretty amazing. And we find that schools really take on the character of that issue when 80% of the students and 80% of the faculty agree. It's not like we give up. You have a lot of stuff in the 90s. When you see your 90s, you guys should be going, well, good stuff. We've got people cooking when they're in the 90s. So 80% or better, gaps between groups, 10% is statistically significant. I say, look for 40%. Start there, don't look for 12%, 13%, work on the issues. You should only work on 2 or 3 issues at a time. So choose ones where these are really low numbers or really big gaps. Make your action plans. So the last thing they asked me to do is to explain this piece, because this is the part that is kind of the signature of our work. And it came about and I'm gonna do the really quick version of this. We were in an educational psychology class at New England College of Mine, and we were doing service learning projects. We were trying to have our students who are going to become future teachers serve the schools in the area in some way in our class. We kept reading about this one school district in the paper, that they had the lowest test scores, they had violence, they had problems, they were always the bad school. My kids said, how could we help them? We said, well, let's call them and find out. So we called the principal and superintendent. We said, could we come over and talk with your teachers and your kids and find out what the biggest barriers are to you kids and your teachers being successful? We did. My students rode over to that school. We met with teachers, we met with kids. My students said, please write down a slip of paper the top 5 things that are getting in the way of your being a good teacher in this school, being a successful teacher. And then we met with a really diverse group of kids. They said, write down the 5 things that are getting in the way of you being a successful student in this school. And when we talked through those things, after that, we took that stuff back, we unpacked it, we looked at all the things that they said. There was one word that was consistent across all of them, and it was respect. The problems were respect. There was no respect in the building. The kid said it, the teacher said it. It's disrespect in all different ways of saying that. Of course, my kids laughed and they said, Swiss cheese. What the kids are calling disrespect is completely different than what the adults are calling disrespect. So we just said, you guys are using the word respect, but you have no consensus about what that word means in the school. We'd like to do a different kind of study. We'd like to capture real stories of success, of respect and disrespect in the school, to show you what both of those things look like, from the student's perspective and from the teacher's perspective. So we used pagers, electronic pagers. Remember the doctor pagers? Did you have a pager one time, Glenn?
Mm-hmm.
You could be golfing and take the call and say, oh, I'm at the office. So pagers were great. And by the way, when we used them, they were cheap because they had cell phones by then. So pagers were, you could rent suitcases of them for nothing. So we gave 30 pagers to kids and teachers. And we said, my students at New England College are going to sit there with your bell schedule, and they're going to page those 30 pagers about every hour and a half, 2 hours. And when the pager goes off on vibrate in your pocket, just look around you, listen, watch for examples of respectful or disrespectful behavior that you see at that moment. 5 minutes later, we beep them again. Take out a little form, write down, did you see any respect, disrespect? So they check the box. I saw respect. Write down the words you heard, a little scenario of what you saw. It was like a little iMovie, right? 5-minute window of respect or disrespect. But there was 30 of them. 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. We had 1,200 snapshots of respect and disrespect. We again sat down and looked at them. Do you think the disrespect pile was bigger than the respect pile? Remember they all said disrespect was the problem, right? So there was a huge number of disrespect examples that people pointed to that told stories about different kinds of disrespect. But there also was a significant pile of respect that people saw too. So here's what they ended up being when we did the qualitative analysis. There was a couple of incidents of violence, but not many. By the way, this was post-Columbine when violence prevention was the biggest rage in America. We're spending millions and millions of dollars on putting metal detectors in schools, all this stuff. And we saw 2 out of 1,200 snapshots of violence. So it was a small, and it was like getting thrown against a locker or punched in the nose. There was lots of threats though. There was a lot of threats to violence. There was a bunch of hate speech, verbal harassment. There was a lot of bullying, verbal bullying and some physical bullying. Kids identified bullying as disrespect. There was a lot of examples where teachers were telling kids to do things and they didn't do it. Do your homework, I didn't do my homework. Be quiet, sit down, kids wouldn't be quiet, sit down. Non-compliance, disrespect. Then they started getting into respect was compliance. Oh, wait a minute, is that what the teachers meant? When the teacher said there's no respect here, when we really listened, they were saying, when I tell you to do stuff, you don't do it. So their definition of respect in that school was when I say to do it, you do it, and that's respect. If a school defines respect as compliance with teacher mandates, is that a certain kind of school? Keep going. We got into the green zone. Kids wrote, I think this is respectful. This teacher knows stuff about my family, and I have a really good relationship with her, and I really like to talk to her about my problems and my issues and my needs. I think that's respect. This teacher takes what she knows about us, and she changes the way she teaches depending upon who we are. Like, if I'm a kid who loves sports, she'll let me write about sports. Or if I'm a kid who needs more time, she'll let me have a little bit more time. Differentiation of instruction, they were talking about. But it was just like the teacher was personalizing the learning. This teacher, oh, I love these. There was a teacher who taught science, and he used to do these crazy, wacky experiments and stuff, and blow up things and light things on fire. The kids would run to his class because it was engaging and fun, and he was funny, and he did really stupid experiments, and he drove his point home through humor and entertainment. Teachers gave kids choices, and they said that was respectful. When the teacher lets me make choices about things, I feel respected because I have a little bit of a voice in the classroom. And I want to tell you the last story, the empowerment one. There was not too many of these, but here's the story that caught my attention. One girl, senior, in an English class, she said, first day we beeped her, I just handed in my final for a poetry class, and I think it was a really respectful final. The teacher was teaching us different genres of poetry, and she let us write an original poem in the genre that we felt like we learned the most about. And I think that's a respectful test. Next day we beeped her, she's back in that same classroom. She says, yeah, oh, that teacher brought our poetry back, but she went to Kinko's last night, she published all of our finals in a leather book. She published our poems. I think that's respectful. Next day we beep, we're in the middle school with our book, reading our poems to little kids, and they really like our poetry. We're like poets on the road. We think that's respectful. And the last one of that was late in that day. We beeped, and she said, we're in the library in the middle school. The kids want to take our book home and read the poems, the funny ones, to their little brothers and little sisters. So the librarian in the middle school, the librarian is putting one of those things in so kids can check out our book of poems, and they're going out in the community. Is that empowerment? That's respectful teaching, it seems to me. So schools that work on school climate, many schools spent time trying to crush disrespect, zero tolerance. Other schools did things like PBIS, which they measured respect by discipline data. They didn't collect school climate data, they collect discipline data. And their respect is if you comply with, there's so many infractions, so many kids under, your kids are obeying the rules, that's respect. And this is what we think personalized, empowerment, engaged learning looks like. And we think that's respect. We evaluated all this in your data. There's a lot of schools that don't teach this way, and a lot of teachers that don't teach this way. This is sort of more personalized, progressive kind of teaching. If you're a traditional teacher, you might have not scored so good on some of this stuff, but these were the questions we asked your kids. So I have to stop. I just wanted to give you this little definition of respectful schools and show you that that's what your data looks like, is that and the national standards that Kim had. All right.
So just real briefly, some of the work that's happened last year at Miller Driscoll, the student team, and it's student voice. So they really, the kids went out into all the classrooms and asked a series of questions, and they decided, based on the student feedback, there was a real problem in the bathrooms. Which was a really gross project to work on, I must say. And our high school, what's been really cool about the work is that our high school team has gone down into the lower team buildings to help. So our high schoolers went down and helped, and they had poster contests, and they papered the bathrooms, and they did a video, and you can see in the slide they decorated trash cans,
And Bob, those kids going from the high school down there just energized those kids so much, and energize those high school kids a whole lot too. So that idea, again, of having high school kids be the mentors to the younger kids was amazing.
and those kids now transitioned up to Cider Mill, and a lot of them continue on the team there. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry.
You'll see even some of the familiar faces. So at Cider Mill, they're working on, and they've analyzed their data and set goals, and Jen's gonna talk a little bit more about the work. I'm done here, so I'm not gonna go into Cider Mill. And at Middlebrook, it was clear that the behavioral expectations were written down, but they really weren't brought to life. And so they focused on how do we make sure everybody's clear on what the expectations are and bring those to life in the building. They had a contest for a school logo, which you'll see up there. And finding a way to do the work without having faculty and students miss class time is a growing problem in the upper grades, because our kids are so stressed out about obviously doing well in their classes. So they really work to create a system where those kids can come out and do the work with the teachers and be available through the flex block. So that was a big push that's been implemented this year. And there's a little picture of the Peace Rocks. That's one of the projects the kids already worked on this year.
Can I just say too that the way that you did, Lauren, the expectations, you brought kids in this summer to work with you on that. So again, that could have been, if we go back to Saracen, that could have been a really kind of adult-driven thing, but the fact that you used that team of kids to help you develop that, to help roll that out. And then the other thing I have to applaud you at Middlebrook for doing, because this is what Bob and Kim and I spent our day doing, was saying, how the heck do we get time to work with these kids to make room in the academic calendar? And what you did with the flex block schedule is going to be a model that I think we were talking about today as something that we have to figure out how to do that to capture some non-instructional, time to do the work. If you have everybody tied up in academics and they're so stressed about that, they won't play. So your two pieces there, I think, really match exactly what we were talking about.
And at the high school, at middle school actually focused on this as well last year, is connection, student connection, ensuring we know that keeping a safe environment, the research shows that students need to be connected to school and connected to adults. So we surveyed, we had the teachers complete a survey and the students to identify what students may not be connected. We may know some of them, but there are also other students that maybe we're not aware are not connected in some way. And then once we were able to identify, making sure that those students have connections, and that's something we're going to continue this year. Another project that we brought to life in a different way this year, which you'll see with the pictures, is Humans of Wilton High School. And this came out of the data that my teachers maybe don't know my strengths, interests, and talents. So focusing on maybe students that are new to our school. We had something up in the cafeteria this year. We're using QR codes where you can use your phone to get more information about new staff or students that we're focusing on. And then our students have set their goals for the year, and we're going to try to tackle the stress that our students are feeling.
And so stress was definitely the big issue that they wanted to work on, but they also picked out, when they looked at the gaps in perceptions of white and non-white kids in the school, of males and females in the school, of college-bound and non-college-bound kids in the school, they thought this notion of hate speech and discrimination, sort of the harassment piece, there was ample evidence, so they had that 2 months ago as an issue that they want to work on proactively at the high school. And so when you talk about the ADL coming in, I think this notion of having the ADL tap into those kids, because that's something they're interested in, and almost partnering with them would be a beautiful way of doing that shifting power relation. Instead of having the expert guys come in and do their thing, tying into what kids have already identified as needs, they already have data, local data on that they could share. It could be a really cool partnership. So, all right. So the thing that I loved about this data, and this is our little lead into our little case study, is I think that is, when we talk about this notion of kind of continuous progress and growth, using the data formatively to make changes and try some things. So this notion of having a vision that describes what we stand for and believe in, any organization has to have that. Look at the data from 2015, this is faculty data. And 30 to 49% didn't know if there was a vision that's just, I mean, I thought that was pretty crazy. But look where we are now. So it's pretty easy to move these numbers 40, 50 points if you sort of just play around it. Kevin, when you rolled out the vision, I think in your first year here, that had school climate in the center of what you guys stand for, that got people's attention to say this is a legitimate project, this is not this fly-by-night thing that's going away. It was built into the vision of the system. And look what happened, people seem to buy it. I love this one too. In our school, many students give chances to be leaders. Again, from 55 not known to 95. Okay. And so this leads us to Jen, and this is her data, so go for it.
So I'll just start off by saying, this is my 5th year here, and it's been an interesting journey. Just quickly looking at it, you can see that Bill kind of came in halfway through my 3rd year. And the first year is the listening year, as my friends next to me know. You kind of just listen and take things in, and you don't make a lot of changes. The second year was a year of introducing a lot of change after I listened. We introduced a new schedule, a new service delivery model with our special needs students, a new IET model where teachers were getting together regularly to meet together instructional teams. There's a lot going on. I think those of you who were with me that year, culture was not at an all-time high that
Jen, can
year.
we define the difference between climate and culture, because that was in the title? Everybody mixes those things up
Yeah.
and calls them the same thing. How do you talk about climate and culture differently, or do you?
That's a really good question. I know the technical differences, but I know that culture is kind of more of a vibe that you feel within of a school, things that are like history, the way that we're used to things, where.
It's how the adults are together.
Okay.
I mean, which
Yeah.
is based on, adult, you walk in as a new
Yeah.
teacher to school and you just sort of listen and you realize, oh, there's a
This
way
is-
people are in this
Yeah.
building. And you're not the young kid who stands up and, says all the right answers at the faculty meeting or something.
Yep.
So to me, adult culture is the target of this work. We are trying to change grown-ups, guys. I always ask you guys, who are we working on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's student leadership, but what's the point? It's to help that student voice cause that cognitive dissonance in the faculty. I thought I already did that. Oh, maybe if I listen to kids, maybe I'm not doing it quite as much as I think. I have that conversation. Oh, now we have a collaborative culture where we listen to kids and we talk about this, it's not all top down. We would striving to change adult culture, and school climate is sort of part of the byproduct of that work.
And I will say, as Bill came in mid-year, that was definitely, I can't tell you how many times I dragged him aside and really asked a lot of questions about what was going on in my school. And that year, we really only got through, when Kim described the process, stages 1 and 2
Right.
of the whole collaborative process. And then the next year, we really engaged in the full process where we really were looking at the data. The kids were so involved in the projects. And I'm gonna go in and show you, like Bill said, the first thing I needed to tackle was really the adults, and so you can go to the next screen here. But I realized in looking at all of the plethora of data that Bill really provided for our school, we really needed to focus on the respect with the adults in our community. We really needed to get to know each other, build relationships, build connectedness, so that we could be there more for our students. And so as much as we during that year had student goals as well, we really added another layer where we actually had faculty goals. You can see them up there. We needed to really look and to improve respectful interactions between adults at Cider Mill. We wanted to improve the adult and student connectedness and relationships at Cider Mill, and we wanted to increase the levels of student belonging. And so those were our 3 goals, and we really had pretty extensive action plans around all 3 of those goals.
And Jen, if you remember, I think that was when you said, oh, can you open up school? Can we start the school year with this climate and culture work?
Yes.
And so we came in for a full day and did that full
Yep.
day.
We did a lot of
Professional development
full-day
with the whole
professional
faculty.
development with the faculty
And I think that's
throughout.
where we started to get a little bit more, again, more faculty started to sort of not be as kind of
Yes,
turned off.
and I would
to
say
it.
we really had to try to take from the first year, so my 3rd year, and where Bill came in and really worked with us for about half a year, it was really only a small group of teachers
Mhm.
and students. And so by the next year, we added the club. We've got tons of students involved in helping hands, like whether it's during the school day or through our clubs. And the goal has been every year to get more adults involved in all of our work. And so every year, we're looking to spread a little bit larger.
We tell the ADT, oh, you did that project with the student leadership team? Now
Go
go
find
find 2 friends
Go find
and say,
friends.
will you help me? I need some other kids involved, I need some other teachers. So there's just notion of diffusion out into the system was what we worked on.
And so, I mean, we've talked a lot about some of the different strategies that we've been doing, but what I really want to show is that through the strategic planning and this collaborative process, if you go to the next slide here, we really had some great gains in our data. And I really think that this is the result of the leadership of our students has been unbelievable. The project, I have kids come in every week with ideas on how to make Cider Mill a better place. I can't keep up with it. I could literally have a staff person full-time just helping me organize and run these projects. Today, I met with two. One is collecting extra candy and giving it to a shelter. The other one is they're coming up with UNICEF boxes, got out a little late in one class, and so they're making bracelets, and they're selling them for $2 to give to UNICEF because they were like devastated that they didn't collect money. I mean, the advocacy and what these kids are just doing is unbelievable. You know, some of that data up there, you know, continuous growth. We really didn't have a mission or a vision of where we wanted to be. We created a mission statement that actually our mission statement came from the students' mission statement, which was phenomenal. And that's really our first Helping Hands group we worked a lot with them to create a mission statement, and then our faculty loved it so much, we created a version of it that was really led our school, so.
And that worked the other way too, where we created goals as an adult design team.
Yep.
And then the next minute, we took them to the kids and we said, will you translate these grown-up goals into like kid speak so somebody actually understands what they are?
Yeah.
So this notion of translating for each other, Swiss cheese translation.
And the kids coming in to introduce their goals and what they thought was important for the school. They've been in to present to the faculty. They've presented actually to open house. Every year they talk about their goals, so it's a very powerful group. And I definitely think that you can see by the data that a lot of this has been having an impact. You go to the next one, Kim. But one of the things that for standard 3, Kim talked about the standards, but school and teachers employ personalized, respectful, engaging teaching and learning practices. And I love the quote that Bill wrote on there that really we had some of the most positive responses by students, faculty, and parents for this school climate standard, and it's consistently among the highest that around the country. And I think that's something to be really proud of, and I think that our faculty members and our students and our staff really have rallied around this. The other thing that we talked about was the efficacy, and a lot of the work we've been doing in regards to professional learning and coaching and having teachers become more self-efficacy, I guess, is that they feel like they can make a difference. And I think that with the data up there, you can see the numbers creeping up close to 80. We kind of want to get it up over that 80% mark. But
And I just want to explain that Hattie number.
Yeah.
So this is to me, as an educator, like where do I spend my time? So Hattie asked the question, not just what works, but what works best. What works best when it comes to different practices? And he was able to analyze literally millions of educational research studies, and he was able to create an effect size for 195 strategies, teaching strategies that are out there that everybody uses. And he put in it, so they have a number on it. And the average is 0.40. In the United States, Canada, Australia, when a teacher goes in and does their teaching in their school systems, it produces a 0.4 to 0.5 effect size, about a little less than 1 year's gain in 1 year. But when you give teachers time to get together, plan, figure out what their problems are, figure out what they want to work on, come up with ideas, strategize, you get a 1.57 effect size. You make 3 years of growth in 1 year. So this notion that we have teachers using teaching strategies all day long, day in and day out, with no time to talk to each other, as opposed to in the countries that are really kicking our butts right now academically, some of those countries, teachers spend more time in professional learning collaboration in the day than they do in the classrooms in front of kids. Think of that. Even if we just had an extra hour of teacher collaborative time to do this, we would be getting higher academic performance than keeping them in there using 0.4 strategies day in and day out, day in and day out. So I think the effect size stuff is so cool, and it tells us, let's drop this stuff and pick up this stuff as our priority for improvement. And it's all kind of common sense. So, all right, well, we gotta move on. So.
all right, and then go ahead.
Oh, did you want to do more?
Well, I just wanted to show that the faculty score, really, we exceeded our target. We had set it for 78 and really got up to 85%, and I think that the strategic planning really got us there. So then, this year, we continue to have student goals, and it's again, as much as we made a lot of improvements in this area, teachers will understand and address students' talents, strengths, and interests to personalize student learning. you can see that we have 3 goals underneath there, and we are in the midst right now of going through the whole collaborative action research process again with our students, with our faculty. The students kind of identified and looked at discrepancies between teacher data and student data, and we really found questions where we responded very drastically different. Bill, you had said 14 points or something was statistically different, but we had some questions where students answered like 40% agreement and staff was like in the 80%. I mean, we had a big discrepancy between the reporting of how teachers are feeling and students are feeling. And so a lot of our goals this year are around kind of bringing those numbers together up at the higher ends. And so we're excited to continue the process.
Cool. So, thank you for your support of this work, and by the way, you've been unbelievably supportive as a system, and I think it's a marvelous thing, and I think your kids are gonna benefit, every day from what you've done with them. We're appreciative of the time to work with schools. We know it's so hard to find time to fit this into everything else that you're doing. So all the principals that have been so busy trying to help us get this work done, it's great that you do so much without any support or time from us at all on your own. But I want you to keep my last little bias in here. This is the nuts and bolts of this work. Clemson University's National Dropout Prevention Center followed us around for 3 years, doing this work in the 5 of the 10 toughest high schools in the state of New Hampshire. And their final conclusion, after watching the 5 schools, adults only working on school improvement, as opposed to kids and adults working together on school improvement in our 5 sites, their finding was when adults invite students to the table to work on improving their schools, it brings out the best in the grown-ups. And that's changing the adult culture. You talked about, was it you that brings the fun here? They said you make things fun and you like a good time.
No,
and
no.
Somebody was funny.
It was definitely him.
Lori's not here.
One of the guys is being celebrated for the fact that you make the work joyful and you make the work fun. And when kids are doing the work with teachers, it's much more of that kind of thing. And so that's what I think you're a great model of, is that you guys have been having fun with the work. It's very evident. And if this work isn't fun, it's probably not working as well as it could be. So let's just figure out ways to keep kids at the table and bring out the best in all of us. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
Kim, thank you for all you're doing to hold all this together. It's a big job.
Other questions?
There's not enough time.
I know.
We'll bring it back, we'll revisit it. This
The only
is, there's
thing
a lot of data to go through.
I might
Yeah, Bruce.
throw out to the
Bruce.
board is
Yeah.
we go off into the sunset. What we've learned here raises an opportunity for us as a district to perhaps do something revolutionarily different in the way we conduct our work with our students. And perhaps what we think about is maybe we give kids more structured free time during the school day to do something constructive, which would open up the opportunity for teachers to collaborate. I don't know what that structured free time is, but
But it's
think about it.
project-based learning is one of those
Right.
options.
Because the
Great
data says,
It's a great idea.
think about it.
If I may, just a comment. Yeah, I just wonder if there's a way to take this message to the community about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And your comment about stress. And it's one of my hot buttons, particularly at the high school level.
You got it. It's the number one issue.
How do we get the parents to understand? And how can we take this message on a broader basis to the broad community and let them see, number one, the work we're doing, what we're trying to do to solve a lot of the problems they've created, okay? I shouldn't say that. But it's true. And I don't know, it's just a thought that comes to mind, I don't know, okay? Just for what it's worth.
Thank you. It's a great opportunity for leadership, that request. Oh, we got a gig, let's put some kids on that.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Kim,
Look
thank
forward
you.
to having you back. Now we move on to our action items, and the first item is to discuss and approve the district calendar.
So I asked Chris earlier if we could table approval of the calendar. I had sent
So moved. Second.
Well, I think it's worth noting.
You said you don't wanna talk about it.
He said he didn't wanna talk about it.
Is there any discussion?
Wait, why are we?
My understanding is that there's some more people that need to provide input.
Okay, that's fine. I just want Kevin to be able to finish his sentence.
Thank you.
Thanks. So in a nutshell,
Can we have a wall and, on this, okay.
I sent the
the one that
communication
started the
to
joke.
Andrew Nixaji a month ago. He didn't receive it, and so he just learned and had some questions about a couple of the changes to the professional development days that he wanted to follow up on. We had a brief conversation. We should be all set by.
So out of respect for our teachers'
Correct.
opinions, we are going to table that until the next meeting.
That makes sense. So do we need a
All in
motion?
favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you. Discuss and approve the district improvement plans and scorecard targets. We first discussed this at our one of our October meetings, and there was board discussion about how we arrived at certain targets. In some of examples, the feeling was that the targets weren't ambitious enough. Maybe a target was to have 60% of the kids achieving a grade level metric. And there was some talk about, well, why isn't it 70%? And we asked you to talk to the principals and report back to us on that.
So a couple of things. I think we can go back and just re-clarify why some of these targets are the way they are. In the conversation I had with Chris about this, and we took the questions from that meeting, and one of the particular questions that Glenn had posed was, well, what if we committed more resources, to a particular target? Could we move the metric? And Chuck had been tasked with that, and he's really just still gathering information. My response about these targets, too, is that principals started to look at this data in the summertime, and they developed plans, and their plans are underway. And so I have a concern that if we change the targets that we're currently working on, then it's going to create issues for getting the work and actually achieving the targets we set. So what I would propose is that we keep the targets as they are. I do intend to engage the board in a discussion about, I think, the scorecard and the targets in general, and then have Chuck come back with some further data to respond to that one question that Glenn asked about, what if we committed more resources, how would we move it? I think some of the other concerns were some of the targets, there are 2 at Cider Mill and a small handful around the ACT at the high school, where the current year's targets appear to be lower than the existing targets. And Jen can speak to that specifically. At Cider Mill, it really is tied to student cohorts. Bob can speak to the ACT targets. That was tied to his 5-year analysis. So I'll stop there, and maybe Jen, you want to take 2 minutes and just kind of review
It's kind
where
of
you are?
confusing, and I could share a colored chart to help out at another time. But basically, it has to do with the difference between cross-cohort and cohort analysis. And so when you're looking at a cohort, you're looking at the same group of students over time. When you see the results reported in the newspaper, they're cross-cohort. We look at 5th grade last year to 5th grade this year, right? So that's cross-cohort. And so you're not comparing, neither way are you really comparing apples to apples, but the cohort is a more direct analysis of what you would expect growth over time. And so what you have to do is you look at both pieces of information, and you then use both pieces of information, both the cohort and the cross-cohort data, to come up with a reasonable SMART goal. So, like, for example, I'm just looking at my 5th grade ELA score, which if you look in 2016-17, it was 83, and I'm at 81. But that's because where you look at my 4th grade the year before, and I know this is really hard to visualize without
Right.
the data in front of you, but that group of students was actually at 77%. Even though when you look at fifth grade, okay, they reached 82, so it looks like I'm going down. That's for a different group of students. So if you go back and look at what that group of students and how they performed, even though it was at the fourth grade curriculum, they actually were only at 77. So me setting a target at 81 is a
Is actually, okay.
rigorous target. And so it's going back and forth between those two data sets.
Right.
And I would imagine we all kind of did the
Right,
same
and
thing.
I would just like to emphasize that the important thing that Jen said is that we're not comparing apples to apples, whether you're doing cross-cohort or within cohort. Because you can't assume that the fourth grade curriculum is equal to the fifth grade curriculum. So they mastered, 77% of the kids mastered the fourth grade curriculum. The fifth grade curriculum could be much harder. So that's why you have to really look both ways. And to a certain extent, it's professional judgment in looking at those 2 points of data and trends over time to come up with what you think is a reasonable goal.
Chuck, there was also some confusion about the benchmark of the 60th percentile on the map. So at Miller Driscoll, we're looking at 80% of our second graders meet or exceed the 60th percentile. So can you explain what the 60th
Sure.
percentile signifies?
So, okay. 60th percentile on the MAP test is a predictor of whether students will achieve a 3 on the SBAC. A 3 on the SBAC means that students are at grade level. So if we get 80% of our kids to grade level, 60th percentile, we are in very good shape in moving the kids forward. Does that make sense? It's 60%, it's 60th
Yeah, when you
percentile
put it
or
that way, it
above. Generally speaking, if 80% of your kids are at grade level, then you have a very strong core curriculum. The other 20% of the kids that we need to do interventions with. Would you add anything to that, Kathy?
Well, I just think it's clarifying that it's the percentile, not
Yes.
60%.
Correct.
Because I think some people get
It's a norm.
confused and think, oh, you just want the kids to get, 80% of your kids to get 60% of the information, and that's not
No.
it, it's at the 60th percentile. And like I explained last time, we changed our targets to better align with then what is the predictor for success on the Smarter Balance assessment. So that's why we changed our targets.
Okay. Is there any further questions, discussion?
I'm not gonna put this well, but so kids performing at grade level. Now, I understand, like, in a perfect world, we want all our kids to be at grade level, but that's never gonna, I don't mean never, but just, there's always gonna be some who aren't at grade level.
Yeah, I don't think 100% at
Well,
grade
right.
level is a reasonable goal.
No, but I think that should also be clear, because I think,
Yes.
I had my teenage consultant comment was, well, she's gonna make kids feel worse. She's like, that's a lot to put on the students, which was, I thought, actually summed it up pretty well. Which was that, we do, especially when I hear parents talking about what other parents say and things like that. So I think that should also, if we can find a way to communicate that out to the community, that, it's pretty good and we're doing the best,
Yeah.
kids are doing, and as we, I can't think of the right words,
We're
but,
looking for growth. Every kid.
yes,
we want to
exactly,
see
thank you,
growth.
Jen.
I also think the important piece is that children don't all start in the same place.
Right,
So if you're coming in, for example, and you're in second grade and you have some weaknesses in certain areas that are heavily tested in that grade level, you're coming in at a different starting place, right? It's like a
Right.
staggered start,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't all finish at the same time.
Right.
The piece that's most important is being able to look at growth.
right.
So each and every student needs to grow. And they need to grow significantly,
Right.
right? Some of our kids, we need to accelerate their growth. Some of our kids, they're growing at their just right rate. So it's about everybody growing.
Right,
For example, you might have a student who's reading at the third grade level when they're in first grade.
right.
We still expect that child to grow.
Yes, yes.
Right, they don't
absolutely.
just,
Right,
okay,
yes.
I don't have to grow for 2 years, I'm not gonna learn, right? So everybody starts at a different place, so we have to remember that these metrics are not always built to measure each student's actual growth. When you only look at that 60% at the
Right.
60th percentile,
Right,
we wanna make sure that everybody who's not at the 60th percentile
Right.
grew
yes,
and grew well, and everybody
Right.
who was way above that to begin with also grew. So those are the kinds of things we need to make sure we're looking at.
right, but, like, again, we had to, I assume, some of them need to grow at their own, what's the comfortable rate for that child? Like, we can't take a child who's reading
Right.
below grade level and expect them the next year to be at grade level even with intervention.
Right, and I think that was what I was alluding to with Glenn's question. We can pour resources into things. Kids have to be able, they have to have the capacity to do that growth. Just giving more to kids isn't always gonna result in the kind of growth that we would like to see. Does that make sense?
So, sorry, no, I'm just, yes, I get, no, they're growing, we want them to grow, we want them to, and they are growing, right? I mean, I just don't want it to be one more marker that, our 8-year-olds are worried about, that
Right.
Yeah,
they're not, they're running our scorecard.
The adult action in the action plans and the work that the administrators spent together this summer and then again with teachers now is really using their collaborative time to try to, in part, accelerate the growth for those kids who are low achieving, because we do, to the best extent we can, we want to get every kid across the grade level
course, right.
threshold and beyond.
And I did share that the preliminary data shows that the kids who did receive intervention did have a higher growth rate than
Mhm.
students who did not
Yep.
receive
Oh,
intervention.
good.
Can
But
I-
even when you look within that group, there are some kids who are not growing as much as we would like, and I think that's speaking to what you're saying. We have to take every kid where they are and gauge their capacity for growth. And some kids, maybe next year will be the year that they're accelerating, but this year they had many things going up there. I'm rambling, but.
Based on these explanations, can I make a motion to approve this?
Second?
No.
Are we ready to vote?
Before,
Mhm.
if-
We'll still discuss it separately.
Yeah, I think, Jen, I understand your explanation, if I may. It just troubles me when I went through this, I sat down and looked at every one of the goals, every one of the targets for the year, and it bothers me to see any target lower than what we did this year. I just don't get it. I mean, why would we reduce our objectives, our goals? That's just a general principle, operating principle, year over year. Why am I willing to accept a lower percentage next year than I achieved this year?
Can I
Because
take a
it's
stab at
different
that?
cohort.
Well, because
They're
they're different
Well,
kids.
in Jen's
Different
case,
kids.
I'm looking at ACT benchmarks across the board. Almost every one of our ACT-related scores, we have a goal next year lower than we did this year.
Glenn,
Again,
when you
it's
look at
the
our
same.
kids year over year, we definitely have grades of kids that are stronger in some areas than others, and it's not necessarily, think of your own kids.
Yeah. No,
You can't expect both of your kids to get the same score on the ACT.
Oh, absolutely not. Oh, I
So
understand
that's
that.
exactly
Oh, yeah.
the issue here. That's exactly the issue. When we look at grades of kids, they have varying ability as they come through. The 2017 class is not mapped exactly to the 2018 class when you look across those hundreds of kids. And that's what they're trying to adjust for. They're trying to put stretch goals in, but that's what they're trying to adjust for.
Well, the SATs, we're expecting to be higher. So,
Can
help
I
me.
explain the ACTs, Mr. Hemmerly? What I did, as I explained the last time, was I analyzed these 5-year trends that I have in front of me from the ACT. And the range in any of these, there are 5 areas in which we're measured, and then there's the composite. And in any of these areas, the range was so small that it's difficult to do a predictive analysis of exactly where we're gonna be and then what measures we're gonna take to go there. I think it's based on outstanding teachers, committed students, supportive families. So I took the mean. I hope that all of these trend up further than right now the composite, which in 2017, well, let's take 2016, we were 27.0. This year we were 26.9, so that mean there is,
look,
that's the
time
mean
out,
of
time
the
out.
5-year trend.
No, time out.
Sure.
I just don't understand. It's nits and nats, it's not much, but if we did 80, 84, 86 on the benchmark who's exceeded AC benchmark reading, why would we now go down to 95? At least give you the same as you did this year. I mean, that's what I don't understand. Why is it a point lower? I mean, if we, yeah, and it's tenths of a point in some cases, okay, not a full point. But if you grew year over year over year for 3 straight years, and now you're gonna go lower than you did last year. I just don't understand that. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
As Kevin explained, much of this work is underway. These
Okay.
scorecards were developed.
Okay, but I'll approve it. I'm concerned.
Well, don't approve it if you don't agree with it.
No, I don't agree with there are just a few there where the goals are less than we did this year.
But we'll see this again
Okay.
later this year.
And also just, we have no control over who takes the ACT.
Oh, we didn't have any control over 3 straight years who took it.
Well,
So all of a
right, so
sudden-
how do we
Right.
know? I mean, just.
Well, no,
You're right.
you
So
showed
everyone takes the
progress
SAT.
year over year over year for 3 straight
Okay.
years.
Right.
Why
All right.
now back off? Or not giving at least the same as you did last year?
Okay.
Okay, that's the point.
All right.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Hey, Chris, sorry, just to prolong this another 15 or 20 minutes. What I might suggest would be helpful for the board is to have a 5-year targets, not next year, but 5 years out, and then a documentation for the rationale for the target. So if we really think that 5 years from now, 80% of the kids should be in the 60th percentile, there's a documentation as to why 80 is the right target. And then we're here, which is not at 80, it's 73, and over a 5-year period of time, if we take these actions, we can get to 80. What I find frustrating about these measures is there's no explanation that I can easily understand as to why these are the right targets. I understand that in any given year, changes are incredibly difficult. I understand the concept of a cohort, so in some cases, I would expect the performance in the subsequent year to be worse than the prior year. You'd anticipate that from the numbers, but I think it might be easier for the board. If this is really, we think about student outcomes, if
Right.
this is one of the measures of student outcomes, is to look out 5 years and then to have a real documentation of what we expect to happen. And that'll start to level out the cohort effects and everything else. So it's something to consider.
But the thing with ACTs is like, then you're talking 5 years out, like today's 6th and 7th graders, and again, I guess I'm a little obsessed with the stress level of our students, but like if in 6th grade we're like, oh, this is their target for the ACT, and they don't need it for just whatever reason, who knows? Like,
Well, again, I'm not sure exactly how it was used. I thought it was to inform how teachers teach kids, not to necessarily communicate to the kids and create stress, so.
but everything gets to the kid, you know what I mean? No, I understand, Chris, but I'm just saying,
I actually think this discussion is very helpful. What I would suggest is maybe the scorecards and the discussions be done in a workshop session
Yeah.
where you have some time to digest this,
Yeah.
give us some feedback, maybe give us some time to think about your comments.
Will they be open to the public, those workshops?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
they are, I mean, well, the workshops are, the public, they're in, right?
Yes, in public,
They're in public, the public doesn't work.
yes.
Chris,
But
you need a
for right
second.
now, we
And
need
Miss-
to.
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the
Aye.
district?
Aye, no, aye,
Aye.
yes.
Any opposed?
Okay.
The district scorecards are approved.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna move on to the courses that were presented to us at our last meeting. Civics and the Contemporary World, is there a motion to approve that new course?
Oh,
Glenn, motion, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's approved. Humanities, motion to approve?
Aye.
Second?
Motion,
Second?
Glenn seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
World Literature Honors, is there a motion to approve?
Motion, I'm so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yukon ECE English, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yukon ECE Individual and Family Development, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I wanna talk about this one.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I was kidding.
He was
Oh.
kidding, I
I'm
knew
in
he
favor.
was
I forgot,
kidding.
you were so funny.
We've got them. All right,
I'm sure I can come up with a half-an-hour discussion on this one.
all right.
No,
Now
I
we
do
have-
wanna say though,
Where are
as we
we?
go on,
We're at the advanced public speaking.
I'm really excited
pass the
about the
individual
stuff that we're
comments
doing with the UConn ECE.
Yeah,
program.
it's wonderful.
I'm really,
It's
really
great.
excited.
As we learned at our last meeting, a student could graduate from Wilton High School with at least a semester and a half worth of UConn credits if they apply themselves.
And it's
Um,
driven by our staff.
I
so.
believe that vote was disrupted, so we're gonna take it
I move that
again.
we pass. we
UConn
approve.
ECE, individual and family development, is there a motion to approve?
Yes.
Yeah,
Second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Advanced public speaking, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Advanced Spanish conversation and composition, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved, that's wonderful.
No,
Great.
no, we got one
Next
more.
page.
Aerospace engineering.
Oh, that was my favorite. Aerospace engineering, project lead the way, aerospace engineering, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved.
Wow, nice
Yeah,
ball.
great, 8 great courses, thank you to
Yeah.
the teachers and the administrators who brought, and the Teaching and Learning Committee who brought those to us.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Our next meeting will be on Thursday, December 7th. That's also our organizational meeting. We will welcome our 2 new board members, Debbie Lowe and Gretchen Jeans at that time. At this point in our meeting, are there any members of the public who would like to come and make a comment? Seeing no one, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion over that? All, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.